This is Pathos.
And this is Logos.
And you're watching John the Ninja.
Ladies and gentlemen, how you doing? It's John the Ninja back in the dojo. This is Studio D or C or E, whatever at this point. I can't lie to you. This excitement is real. The adrenaline is pumping. You could literally see the energy flowing through my fingers because we have such an amazing duo with us today. They are friends of the podcast. They've taken care of your brother. They have gone out of their way to enlighten John. Hey, come out, see us. Even allowed me to roadie for them. My resume is building. I'm going to be just like the drummer of this band who was out on Ozzfest, helping random bands, teaching people to play. But more importantly, when I say these guys, they create spiritual home cooking that has vested in the meaning to create beautiful and truly the last form of magic music. These guys have a message to you saying that you are the arbiter of your destiny, and it is your duty to walk into the void of the unknown and do your best. Do what you want and see what you can get out of it. This Colorado duo I speak of is Pathos and Logos. The progressive music they create is undeniable. Screw Citadel. These guys met in New Jersey while working at a studio with Hatebreed, Kyle mixing, and of course Paul teaching how to play drums. No offense, because their drummer is an amazing drummer. We will keep the band's name out, but once they got together, they realized there was a spiritual connection. These two understood that they were zealots for the arts, zealots that understood that music, writing, understanding, creating was to be adored and to be created and revered through a process. Through that process, they created what they call the Sanctum and On, a Bible-sized book that basically is a bunch of symbols at first glance. But after myself reading it and looking at it, you could see these symbols translate to music. And it has been their guide to creating the music that they have released. With 2020's Glory to the Order and 2022's Cult, they've created these conceptual albums, not just because we've lost CDs, but ones that make you feel like you are still ingrained in holding that vinyl in your hand. You're still looking at the art. You're still appreciating the music and making the connection. Well, now, lucky for me, they've reached out and they've come out with 2025's Gospel. And when I say they got a banger list of 5, the new Eon or Aeon, I want to say Eon because of Eon Flux, but we'll get the right pronouncement. Pentecost, Back to You, their single Let Me Go, and a nice little cover in The Bloom. So ladies and gentlemen, I can't really express my love for these guys anymore. I have to stop being funny. I have to stop being serious. I have to bring on my friends, Pathos and Logos. Gentlemen, how are you?
What's up? What's up, John? How are you, buddy?
I am great. Man, again, this is like the last time we spoke. I was just repeating and repeating and repeating just because the energy, you guys, I really want to stress that to people. The energy that you guys have, not just in your friendship and the music, but it's just, you guys, it's like my friend Tim. You see him, you're feeling high as the sky, and then they're gone. You're like, ooh, what am I doing with life? Something's off. What's missing? So guys, how you feeling? Happy New Year. What's been happening for you?
Happy New Year.
Yeah, Happy New Year to you as well. We're doing good, man. We were actually just laughing before because we were talking about, like everybody does, the resolution, like trying to keep the weight down. And Paul was cracking me up with some inside jokes before we got on here. So if it looks like I'm crying, it's because I actually was.
Yeah, we had a couple of chortles before the interview began. John, we're doing good, dude. We're like everybody, looking forward to the new year and some new music coming out. We definitely got some new perspectives on stuff since the last time we had the good fortune to do an interview.
That's right.
And let's talk about some new music, because shout out to James Cox of When Words Fail, Music Speaks. You guys just did a project with him. I own Summer, the cover of the Deftones, and you guys just know everybody. It's really great to be able to like, they know Pathos and Logos too, sweet. Yeah, now we got a connection. So I wanted to know, I know you guys have done business with him in the past, but he's worked so many years on this project. I wanted to know how you guys initially came into the fold and helped him actually get this dream project of his out.
Yeah, sure, I'll take this one. Yeah, we've been friends with James for quite a while, and he had expressed, I mean, actually, I guess it was years ago now, had
yeah.
expressed his interest in kind of dabbling in the production side of things, you know, trying to get different just songs put together, you know, cover songs and then mix match them with different members of different bands and things like that. And so the original idea for this one was for us to do the instrumental portion of it, and then he wanted to find another singer from another band to do it. That ended up not happening, and because Gospel's coming out relatively shortly, he hit us up and was like, "Hey, let's just do it as an instrumental. It'll be the last instrumental track you guys do, maybe." And we were like, "Yeah, man, let's go for it." It had been in the can for a little while, probably a year, right?
Yeah, I would say.
Yeah, and so we figured, hey, man, the time is now. Let's go ahead and do it. Plus, I mean, I love the Deftones.
Yeah. It was truly like a match made in heaven. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. We love James, as we said before, man. He's a good buddy of ours. Wanted to work with us on that. And then, yeah, like Kyle's Deftone meter, his like Deftone light in his brain started blinking. And we couldn't but say yes.
It's true. I even tracked it using my Stephen Carpenter.
You did too, didn't you?
Custom ESP. Yeah, so the Deftones guitars has his own like signature model. And so I own one of those. And so I use that to track all the rhythm guitars.
Is that the baritone guitar?
Yes, it is, Paul. Thank you for asking.
But it was so, excuse me, I'm tripping. Now the adrenaline's coming down. Now I can't speak. But it was done so great, the way you guys are able to construct. And I wanted to know, because a long time ago, especially, ladies and gentlemen, I'll lie to you now. If you guys got it? You guys got the book? The book?
I'm glad that you brought it up, John. But it occurred to me when I got here to Kyle's house for the interview. I know I don't have the book with me today.
It's okay. Because I was going to compare, ladies and gentlemen, when I say this book, this is my Bible, right? This is a Bible with not just Bible stuff. This is all the extra like notes and stuff like that. This is the size of this book that they've created to let music flow out. You guys use that for a lot of songs to have kind of a guide map of like, hey, we should go in this direction in this one. You know, when you're helping somebody else create, do a cover, do a remix, you know, what is it kind of the same process, or do you kind of have to go back to like, okay, we're working with a different style of creating the art? You know, what was that like?
It's funny that you would bring that up, John.
Good question.
That's a great question. So the book, and we have actually, the Sanctum is not the only book that we have now. The first one, as a matter of fact, is going to be fully in English, is currently, I would say that it's under construction. All of the rites, the rituals, the incantations, everything like that are extant. They exist already, but we're just trying to encode it. We're trying to get it all down in this one book called the Liber Ordo. So that's in process. That one's going to be in English, and that's for people to participate in a more direct way if that's the thing that they want to do. But circling back to the question, I would say that because we were collaborating with somebody else, and it's a pre-written song. It's a song that exists already. And let's be adults about this, well-known and well-celebrated banger for many, many years.
Oh, yeah.
I would say that there's still some of the essence and the energy from the book or books that went into it, not necessarily in any kind of direct or overt way, like we were taking rhythms and modifying things. I think it's a pretty orthodox representation of the track. But sort of the really, man, with Pathos and Logos, anything we do, that vibe is going to kind of be in there.
Yeah.
And we're going to get to that, because back to the cover you did for this album, but I really have to pull it back. The last time we saw each other was 2023. It was like a homecoming for me and a homecoming for you guys. We went to Dingbats up in North Jersey and Clifton. That's where I grew up. That's my first memories of life were in that area. I even stopped by the old place I used to live at. A lot of interesting memories. Some good, some heartbreaking. It's like, ooh, I remember this. But it was so, it was like a coming to grips moment. It was like a full circle moment for me, especially the journey I was about to embark on in 2024. You know, how was that homecoming for you guys? How was it? Because, man, ladies and gentlemen, when I tell you, before we get to the performance, the people there that they knew and the general vibe of like the goodness and love and peace, and that's what a rock show is about. So what was that experience like for you guys for that tour?
I mean, it's definitely great. We always love going back and playing Jersey, you know, and Dingbats in Clifton has been kind of like home base for a while. After COVID, I mean, New Jersey was affected just like many other states. You know, a lot of venues closed down. A lot of the old clubs that we used to play at are no longer around.
Yeah.
But our good friend Michelle Messina, you know, she's the talent buyer there. Shout out Michelle. So we try and get out there to play as often as possible. And I think it's kind of like you were saying, it's a bit of a homecoming in a way. We're not out there that often, so when we are, a lot of friends do tend to come out, and it's just, yeah, it's a vibe, man. We just want to like party with everybody, you know, like it's almost like let's get the show over so we can just dance.
Yeah, dance, hang out. That vibe is always there. And it's funny, John, you talk about you sort of brought you back a little bit to your roots.
Mhm.
Kyle and I don't talk about this in any kind of overt way. You're going to laugh at this because you're going to know exactly what I mean. Particularly given that we're out here in the Rocky Mountains, man. Anytime we make it back out there, WAWA, dude. You know, WAWA, bro. John, you have no idea. Actually, Justy, I can't even do you like that. You do know.
He does, yeah.
If you don't have WAWAs, it's and you know, love life out here in the Rockies, man. But Lord, what I wouldn't do to be able to just walk in and buy a sub at a WAWA. I tell you what,
It's not the same where we're at out here.
not the same,
It's not
dude.
the same.
It's its own thing. It's its own thing, but nothing will be WAWA, man.
Man, the struggle. I'm so sorry. Shout out to my buddy Ryan, who's constantly bitching and complaining about the lack of Wawa in his state. Loves his
He
wife.
gets it, dude. He gets it. He understands.
Oh, it's so
Can't
good.
let that go. You know, Paul, we've spoken about this before, and I always found it so cool that you're so good at playing drums that you're able to literally take any kit, doesn't matter the condition, doesn't matter who, and be able to translate the songs that you guys have written to a live. If for the people that don't know, you usually gig with certain parts of the instrument, but not all of it. You don't usually use the whole kit. You come with your sticks, you come with what you need specifically, and then you ask whoever's there, like, hey, can I bum off your drum kit? And you're still able to create these massive sounds. I wanted to know if you ever ran into a situation where, you know, you're looking at the kit, it's like, I'm good, but I really got to throw out the stops. I really got to change up the arrangement, because when I think about like how, you know, you got the jazz kit, you got the rock kit, and then every other drummer has their certain symbols, certain things that they want, you know, it's mind-boggling the way you guys play. It's like, yo, there's certain sounds he's still getting out of this kit, even though he doesn't have the other toms for it. So I wanted to know, like, what challenges you've been confronted with adapting the music.
First off, thank you for your kind words. I very much appreciate your everything nice you had to say about it. Because I work harder than hell, man. You know, Kyle and I are, for whatever other responsibilities that we have in our lives, we still, you know, just as much as we ever did, we're working hard at our instruments, always trying to aim for that next level. And with regard to the kits and stuff, I, as recently as even 2021, still had days where I was practicing, sometimes up to 9 hours in a given day. And I will tell you that does kind of grease the wheels a little bit. When you're behind your instrument that much, and then you're in this alien location, you're playing somebody else's stuff, you're trying to walk that fine line between being able to still express yourself properly and also be kind to their gear. Because Kyle's laughing because the moment I said that, he's thinking about how in Lincoln, Nebraska, how I had to Venmo a guy $50 because I popped his bass drum head. Trying to walk that fine line. It does present a challenge. I will say that it has been my experience, having done it this way for several years now, that there are commonalities that exist enough between not just drum sets, but drum sets in the metal world. Mm-hmm. There's sort of common threads and tethers with the way that people set their stuff up. So that kind of helps you get by. There have been situations where the gear was kind of tough, and I have had to edit or alter passages or well-worn phrases that I'm accustomed to playing in certain songs. And I'm not afraid. It's actually, I think, a certain degree of pride, John, that the experience of travel as we've had it over the course of the last couple of years has sculpted the way that we write our music. You know, like there's stuff that I do that like I'm not out here trying to write double kick parts at 260, you know, like because maybe I do. Maybe we end up in Amarillo, Texas, or we end up in Windsor, Ontario, and I'm playing behind a bass drum that feels like a cardboard box. You know, that's speeds like that are a level of specialization so specific that it's really kind of hard to bounce around. So, you know, I'm proud of sort of the deliberate stylistic choices that we've made as a result of going out and doing it for real, man.
Yeah. And you guys have been very vocal, especially for Cult, talking about like, Kyle, you don't just rush into the solo. You guys have a very structured, we're gonna do the rhythm here, and then we'll flesh out the rest of the music. Kyle, when I you know, we had that conversation. Like, I like moving and playing. You love moving and playing. You know, I'm thinking like, I'm not thinking I'm gonna run around like Angus Young, but I'm walking around. I got a mean look on my face. I'm doing that. Guys, when I tell you they took the stage at Dingbats, this man did every single cool rock move of presence on that stage. I see why you guys have to stay a duo. He was running around. He was doing these monster stops. He's got a guitar that's 7/8 strings, and he's playing complex music solos, stomping and jumping, and that look of like the tiger. It was the coolest thing. And I was sitting there, I'm like, damn, bro, I don't know if I could move on a solo like that. I like playing solos and moving, but doing a sweep and moving across the stage, it was the coolest thing. And that's where the next question pops in, is like, is there a technical piece? Because again, you guys spent so much time with your instruments. You guys have mastered them. You guys have gone well beyond those who you've been influenced by and have learned from. Is there a piece where it still makes you sit there and like, oh, I better stand still for this one? An Yngwie piece, like it's so good, even Yngwie's like, oh damn, I can't even play this. Hold on.
Yeah, actually, I mean, I have all that stuff happen, you know, all the time, every single show. You know, there are, I feel like I'm constantly trying to transition from being a rhythm player into a lead player. And so, man, to be honest with you, every lead part is that in my brain. You know what I mean? I'm just like, oh my God, please don't F this up, you know? And so ultimately, I guess it comes down to kind of like what Paul touched down on with just the hours and hours of practice. Man, I'm not the kind of guy that I don't sit down and practice other people's songs. I don't sit down and learn, you know, just kind of like just arpeggios at random and stuff like that. I have been this way for years, where I practice the songs that we are going to play over and over and over and over and over again, to the point where honestly, man, I'm not thinking about what I'm playing. I'm just begging and just making a negotiation with myself and the higher power. Just please don't fuck up. Please don't fuck this up. So that's usually what's going through my head at all points in times. And then everything else is just kind of muscle memory. But oddly enough, I still cramp up not playing the lead parts when I'm just doing, like, if I'm holding one chord and doing like a wisdom part or like a staccato, you know, chuggy chug, my left hand will actually begin to cramp up. And it's the most simple things, you know, that get you still. So as much as I can do this, like just holding the one finger power chord, you know, and drop A or whatever for too long, my arm will get tired.
Well, to be fair, Kyle, the neck of that H string is like you could surf on.
It's like a throat, man.
It is pretty, yeah, you know, and for a while I was actually having like shoulder problems and hand and wrist problems because of it. So I had to switch over and start playing a lot of the stuff with my thumb. And once I did that, I mean, honestly, I haven't had those issues, knock on wood. I haven't had those issues since. But I guess the other thing Paul was saying is, you know, yeah, the size of the neck is a little bit bigger. I'm more comfortable from like fret 7 or 8 up. And so I try not to play down on the lower frets that much. When I do, that's when I get the hand cramps, man. It's kind of an unnatural position.
That's where that thumb comes in.
That's where the thumb comes in.
Kyle, you also, if anybody will recall, because it literally happened to you, you would remember this very well. Kyle, it was either the brand or the gauge of string that Kyle prefers, just because it has that bite and that sound. it was tearing into the skin of his fingers on his left hand, dude. Just like the constant, the combination, the combination of the music that we've written and that we play, and also the caliber of stage performance that Kyle puts on. He's got that deadly accuracy up and down the neck, but he's coming at it with force. And so the skin on his fingers was splitting. He's going through a bottle of new skin every day. And so I think that is also half the reason why, you know, if you're bouncing back and forth between the open and the first fret, like on the 8th string,
Yeah,
that OG video game thumb is getting a workout, dude. You know,
it's my contra thumb.
the contra thumb comes out, dude.
But even at that show, you broke a string, and it's not, especially thank you for mentioning how thick those strings are. That's not an easy string, even if it's gone through years of abuse. It's not easy to break, say, even the E string on a regular guitar. So that's just a testament to how powerful you guys are when playing, and the adrenaline too. But you guys just have this magic. You know, how did that tour end for you guys? I know it was a little bit more of a learning curve. You guys, especially up to that tour and with Cult, you guys saying you were still learning, you were still trying to get things going, and you said you were reaching out to people. It was a little different because now the spotlight was on you, and it was looking good. That's why you guys deserve to be there. You have to be there. It's your duty to be there. But you know, even when you're so good and this and that, there's still learning curves. What were some of the learning curves you had as far as the tour, and not just on stage, but also behind the scenes, because you were even booking the tour as well?
Right. I would say the biggest lesson that came out of like touring behind Colt was, building your team. Right.
Yeah.
I guess that would be my biggest thing. Or I shouldn't say my biggest thing, our biggest thing that we came that, years later, we're still talking about, or even still trying to kind of flesh out, is just building your team, man. And your team is, all the extra people that you work with, and I'll just be honest with you, rely on, that aren't in the band necessarily. So you're talking about managers, you're talking about booking agents, you're talking about, PR people, all that stuff. And a lot of things you just end up learning the hard way.
It's actually, John, it's an interesting question. I appreciate this question.
Good one.
Because Kyle mentions the team. We're just two dudes. We have had several creative endeavors before Pathos and Logos that featured more members. And those obviously did not pan out. Just the evolutionary chain kind of stopped with those. And now we've distilled it down to just you guys. And so the learning curve for us, I think, in a general way, has been steeper than it might be if the sort of labor and the effort was distributed among more people. But particularly behind Cult, man, the power of the team, precisely because we're the ones out on the front lines, playing playing at what the hell is it?
Beaumont,
Texas.
St. Joseph, Missouri.
Yeah, playing so far down in Texas that in order to come back up north, we have to go through a border crossing. It requires a lot of coordination, and we're capable guys. But having the team, and also realizing that no matter how many times you do it, no matter how many situations you've been in where you're doing the same thing, stuff that feels familiar, you can't make assumptions about certain things. Because like, there was a gig that we did somewhere, it will remain nameless, where something very obvious, Kyle goes to tremendous lengths with his setup to make sure that it is as direct and facile and easy to understand as possible. And there was a sound person that we were working with that just got plugging in a basic component incorrect. And we are supposed to have a stereo sound. We weren't in stereo. Kyle obviously is an expert with recording and sound engineer stuff, had to fix it himself. So you can't make assumptions, man. You have to it'll work out okay. Maybe it will. It's okay to hope that it will, but be prepared for the possibility that you might have to take matters into your own hands.
Yeah. And that's, I guess we say that a lot, is like, I guess we'll do it ourselves.
That kind of started to become our motto. Fine, we'll do it.
But look what that's gotten you. It's gotten you so much farther. Just for me, I want to know what the longest night of the tour. You guys have stories where you've done like multiple layovers at the same airport. You know, you flew out of the airport and then had to come right back and then get on the flight. And I was looking, you guys in a lot of interviews said like, oh, we're not spring chickens anymore. We're not partying. We're not doing like we used to. I'm sitting here like, yo, if I remember that night correctly before I got that girl's number, you guys were at the bar too. I just wanted to know what would have constituted like, you know what, that was actually a rough night.
When you were John, you can do a lot with a little magic on your side. You can get a lot done with a little magic, bud.
Power of magic, baby.
The two things that immediately jump out at me. That's funny that James's name should come up because yes, sir. We had played at the Lions Lair. Was that what it was? Lions Lair in Denver. Finished the gig at Lions Lair. I think, did Lion Tortoise play with us that night?
Oh yeah,
they're Void Atlas now.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a good show, man. And so we finished the gig at Lions Lair and then hopped on a plane to get to South Carolina because the next gig the next day was in Columbia, South Carolina. Not a lot of sleep, you know. But made it happen. Had two good shows. But with that, again, the learning process, the learning curve. All right, maybe we don't book a show in Denver on a Friday night and then a show in South Carolina the next night.
Yeah, that was a you know, we're not spring chickens now, but we were then, and that was just like a scheduling snafu, man. We made a scheduling snafu, but we held up our end of the bargain. We fucking made it. We made it. There was actually a lot of other stuff that happened on that trip, and I may be conflating trips here, so correct me if I'm wrong. But as Paul said, we played in Denver. We went to DIA, stayed there all night long, took the morning flight at like 5 o'clock. There were no direct flights to South Carolina, so it took us into like a smaller airport in North Carolina, Spartanburg or something like that. And so we got there, got on a little connecting flight that basically went up and came back down. When we landed, we had to do an interview in the airport.
Yes.
Finished the interview in the airport, went to go get the rental car. They were out of rental cars. Yeah. So then we had to get in touch with U-Haul, take an Uber to the U-Haul. We rented a box truck, made it through the show there in South Carolina, or maybe there was two shows, I can't remember now, but also had to do an interview from inside the box truck when we returned it. And yeah, all of this was in the span of like 48 hours. I don't remember sleeping.
Yeah, no vivid memory of it. It was just kind of a stream of activity. Yeah. It was a lot, dude. We got it done.
But we did it, yeah.
Oh no, I even used that interview, the one at the airport. I helped prep this one. I ain't gonna lie to you. But for anybody that will go back and watch that interview, you guys are so good at just being in the moment. Like no one would have been able to tell that you're dying, physically just tired. And that's, you know, you're thinking like, well, it was in the head. I was screaming, you know, like God. But, you know, that's just a testament. You guys said the right words. We held up our end of the bargain. People don't understand how pivotal, as you said, for the team it is for you to show up, for you to be on time, for you to get, you know, that agreement. It's still very much a handshake in certain areas, and especially the way you guys have been conducting business. You know, that's how it's done right. We got to hop on to gospel now, because something really funny. This is lore you got out there. Kyle, when you first guys met, you kind of forced yourself on the band and you were trying to be the singer, and Paul was like, no, you're fired. So, you know, you guys made it very, very intentional to start this band out as an instrumental. And when I started hearing you guys do vocals, that inspiration came again. It's like, oh, they're changing it up. Let's see what they got. Something had to talk to you spiritually to go in this direction. So I wanted to know, what was the first inkling of like, okay, let's add the vocals, and how was that conversation, Kyle? Did you look at him like, oh, now you want me to sing? Like, what was happening?
You know, man, there were a lot of different things kind of out there in the world. This actually goes all the way back to while we were touring on Cult, man. While we were touring on Cult, we were meeting lots of people, lots of people in the industry, just kind of moving our way up, I guess, right? And at a certain point, there was a very, very talented singer locally to us that became available. And we thought, even though we had a whole nother instrumental record ready to go that was called Gospel, we thought we would reach out to this singer and just see if they were interested. Because honestly, we weren't that interested in doing vocals unless it was going to be able to take us to another level, right? Like we already felt that we were kind of like forging our own path and getting a lot of attention with Cult, even as an instrumental group. Anyway, all that to say, so they were on board, and so we kind of abandoned the instrumental record because we realized just trying to put vocals on top of that, whether we were doing it or somebody else was doing it, those songs weren't written for vocals. There's solos and leads and stuff all over the place, and you've got to kind of scale that back a little bit and leave room for people to do their thing. And so we wrote a whole nother record. This one was catered towards vocals. It was intended for vocals. We wrote, or I shouldn't say wrote, we helped write a lot of the lyrics at the same time we were writing the songs, melody lines, and that's how Gospel ended up coming to fruition. Unfortunately, the singer we had reached out to, things just didn't work out. And that's where we hit the crossroads, so to speak, right? We're basically like, okay, do we start over and find somebody else and start this entire process over, maybe even having to write the songs over again from scratch, maybe having to do a third record in 2 years? Or do we just do it ourselves and keep the autonomy of just being able to kind of keep it within the group here? And Paul's always been an excellent singer. Not everybody knew that, but anybody who kind of knew him back in the day from New Jersey would have known that Paul has an amazing soulful voice. And I've always been a kind of like, I was a screamer in previous bands, including a band that we were in before, which he famously fired me from. But so we decided to kind of combine forces, the yin and yang here, right, and see what that could do. And the result is what you've heard so far.
I wanted to know what inspired you guys, other than the book itself. What was kind of like the starting point of like, okay, now we're doing lyrics for this?
Well, John, it comes from a variety of different sources. Some of it was obviously stuff related to the book and sort of the system that we have. Some of it, the lyrical content on the recording is based on just the experience of waking up these sort of, ancient decommissioned vocal capabilities. Circling back to the subject of the like firing Kyle from so Kyle is an excellent vocalist. He's very, very good. And what I didn't know at that time, what I wasn't thinking about, it was back in the day. I had less experience, kind of we all did. And it was like the vibe at that time was very different. What I had to take into consideration was that Kyle was working at this studio. He's tracking Trevor Strnad on 4 songs on the Nocturnal record. He's tracking Maria Brink, for that first In This Moment record. He was working with some pretty intense artists. You want to talk about working with some pretty intense hours. The band that we were in at that time, myself and the singer for that band, just thought of it as Kyle going underwater, and he'll come up for air in 2 weeks. We'll see the man again in a fortnight, as it were. But Kyle got back up into fighting form very quickly. The band there where he was that powerful, vocal force, it didn't take long for the rust to come off. For my part, the vocals and the lyrics kind of grew in tandem. Again, some of it was the book, some of it was the experience, the situation we were in. Some of it was related to the struggle of just trying to apprehend new abilities. I have never been a screamer of any kind. I have always been a singer. And so the process of cultivating not just like the ability to do, screams, but that kind of lower Glenn Benton deicide, David Vincent Morbid Angel thing that I always found appealing to listen to. It was a journey, dude. So yeah, there was kind of several well springs, I think, that contributed to the lyrical content and the meaning.
But that was the song that it is so Pathos and Logos, and it is not Pathos and Logos. It was so brilliantly done with the piano, and then there's a build up, and you think you're gonna get this, this really anthemic hit, and then it drops back down, and then you're like, whoa, wait a minute. And then again, back to the lyrics like hold your head high, tell yourself you did it, but you won't admit it. That was striking the chord. And then when you guys finally allow the guitars to come in, for the bass to come in, it grooves. When you were writing, you used the book. Where was this and the scale of creating? Because again, you already had the instrumental music. Was this one where you had to go back and totally pick it apart, or is it kind of just completed for the vocals, and then you guys created this masterpiece?
Well,
That's a special one.
Yeah, specifically the song "Back to You," John, which I think you're referencing the lyrics for that. It could be interpreted a lot of different ways. You realize that even as you're creating the lyrics, and you know what the intentions are, when it's out in the universe, it can be interpreted a variety of different ways. So there's a part of me that's almost reticent to even speak on what it means to me, because you don't want to dictate to anybody else the way that they should be feeling it. But what I will say about specifically the lyrics and sort of the architecture, the energy of the song "Back to You" was I was surprised practicing. And, like I'm sitting there and I'm like, there's, people that we've encountered, in the music business, other fellow musicians, aspiring or claiming to aspire to, move up to a higher level and be successful. And you have this moment where you're like, I have spent more time trying to beef up the strength in my left leg on a double bass pedal than some of these people who claim that they want to be successful. They really want it. More time just on that than these people who worked on anything. And so that's a little bit of like are you so sure? Do you deserve to feel like this? Have you really earned that feeling of petty triumph that you think that you get to revel in? It's there is that part of you that's just like, I just want to take whatever you think you've got and make you face it, tear it in two and hand it back to you, make you really examine if you understand what it means. The way that, everybody has their journey, no shade to anybody, everybody's process is different. But Kyle's and my process getting to everything that we've done before, and where the trajectory that we're on now has had an unusually high and unusually long period of R&D. A lot of reordering things, a lot of adopting new skills, anywhere ranging from the way that the music is written to the way that we function as a band and as a business. The logistics of flying 22 times, like we did in the year 2023. We flew 22 times that year, and it's like, all right, man, like are you sure you know what it is to work hard at this thing? So that was a little bit of the motivation for the lyrics for that song specifically.
And from my perspective, I guess I don't even want to, just from my recollection, I remember building that song up from a production standpoint. And so when it first came out, Paul really just had the basic melody line. He did show it to me on a piano first. And so that's why we stuck with piano for the radio edit anyway. He basically brought it to me as just vocal and piano. And then everything else kind of got fleshed out from there. The idea to turn it into like a big ballad was kind of fleshed out from there. But if I remember correctly, when Paul came to me with it the first time, he probably had 80% of the lyrics already. And he's just like, hey man, check this out. And then did the whole thing. And I remember just looking at him and being like, we have to, like, we'd be idiots not to do this, That song came together really, really quick. You know, I hate to say it because I don't want to take anything away from it, but we probably spent the least amount of time on that song in particular. But we are very, 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 very happy with the way it came out.
Kyle, I owe you a debt of gratitude. I don't know whether or not I've mentioned this to you in a direct way enough times, but I appreciate your encouragement with that song in particular. John, I mean, you've heard the song, I'm sure you would agree. It is very unlike not just other music that we've done before, but it's unlike even other songs on gospel.
Yeah.
You're stepping out into the unknown a little bit. You feel good about something that you've created, but you do have questions about whether or not it fits into the overall scheme of what you're doing. Because again, not that you're consciously in some like forceful way placing limitations, but you don't want to I don't know, like, hey Kyle, I wrote this song that sounds exactly like a song that Weird Al would have written in 1988. Okay, so maybe that one doesn't make the cut to the record. So I appreciate your encouragement on that, because now listening back to gospel as much as we have, I do feel as though it fits into the overall art and energy of the album.
Yeah, especially the lyrics. If somebody were to kind of just like take it just off of lyrics and you read through all the lyrical content, I think so.
I would agree. It fits in perfectly, but it's so different. And that's what I really appreciated. Even with my situation, I would say this, Paul, I felt like, you know what? Yes, I did deserve it, but I couldn't enjoy the win. I couldn't enjoy when I actually succeeded, because look at the high standard I have. And then that voice was also the other voice is like, well, do I really deserve it? Did I earn it? And in reality, I did. So that was kind of where I was coming from. That's how I shifted my thinking towards it, because it's like, after, you get sick and tired of the Metallica thing. It's like, well, you got screwed at the Grammys, you got screwed at the Grammys, you got screwed at the Grammys. You're like, you know what, damn it, I got screwed at the Grammys. That's how I was looking at it. But the next one, the single, most undoubtedly, Let Me Go. You guys have 3 versions of it. You have the Hunter Moon version, the radio edit, and the instrumental, which I loved. That's very like the radio guy in me is like, oh yeah, we need the 3. It's always there's always the B side and then the different versions of the song. So
Yeah.
what was that push like? Because when I first saw how everything was formatting, that was the one I was like, okay, that's definitely one that they've had in the can for a while, and that they really wanted to push it a certain way.
So the way I guess we did these songs a bunch of different ways, all the songs on the record, right? So even with Let Me Go specifically, as you said, there's 3 different versions that are getting released on the single version. You get the instrumental, you get Hunter's Moon version, which is like a death metal inspired version, just a heavier Mad Max version, if you will. And then you get the radio edit, which is the original version of the song, I guess. But we wanted to put all that stuff out there because we felt like all the different versions of the songs were cool in their own way. Hunter's Moon version has this kind of like wild kinetic energy to it, and then when you hear the instrumental versions, you get to like the drums come out a lot more because things aren't being kind of like wrapped up by vocals and stuff like that. And simply because we were an instrumental band before, it's kind of like an ode to our roots in a way. There are going to be certain fans of instrumental music who just want the instrumentals, and we understand that, and because of that, here you go, right? But that's going to be the scenario for each song on the album. So each song on the album has multiple versions, and kind of a throwback to like what you were saying, like the radio guy in you, where you would get a single and it's got an A side and a B side usually. That's kind of what we were thinking about this time too. Like I remember the first music I ever bought was back when cassettes were out, and I didn't. I mean, I was like 5 years old, so I just took my allowance money or my chore money. I didn't have enough money to buy the whole cassette when they were like, $24 MSRP or whatever. But you could go get the little Motley Crue single in the cardboard sleeve that just had "Girls, Girls, Girls" on it, and "Smoking in the Boys' Room" or whatever on the backside. And it kind of got us thinking, well, like, man, people aren't really buying albums. People aren't supporting the album format as much anymore. So let's go back and give them the singles, man. So that's why this version is called Let Me Go, the Singles. and you get all the different single versions. But as we move through the rest of the record, Back to You, there's an acoustic version that's just vocal and acoustic that'll be coming out for that one. Pentecost will also have, you know, like a Hunter's Moon or a death metal style version along with it, along with the instrumental version. I believe there's a sped up version or a slowed down version of that one. I can't remember now, but there's just, I mean, I think there's going to ultimately be 15 tracks that come out associated with the 5 songs on the record.
It's a little bit of a feeling of I think one of the other motivating factors is just, it's a little bit of like, we're grown ups and we can do whatever we want.
Yeah.
Like just this new frontier that it was a lot of work getting to the point where we were able to get our vocals back up to fighting form and then get to where we could successfully pull them off during live performance. And it's freeing, John. You know, it had been so long. It's like, yeah, well, why wouldn't we do that? You know, like the album, just like Kyle was saying, the album format is changing. And it's like, it's almost like a comic booky, like, what if? Like, what if Let Me Go had this crazy heavy version that we then, you know, put that out. And then again, as Kyle touched down on the homage to the instrumental origin, you put that instrumental record out version out as well.
I did have it on repeat, but the thing was, I kept on zooming. I was listening to the album while working, and then I kept on zooming in and out, and it was messing with me because the edits are pretty much almost the same time. So you're sitting there looking at the time frame, and you're like, oh, but it's the same song. But I wasn't cognizant that it was the different versions playing. So I was hearing different things here and there, and I'm like, am I losing my stuff or am I not paying attention? Because that's new. Oh, I didn't remember hearing that 5 seconds ago. What happened? Okay.
Well, okay, and that's exactly why we did that. There are certain aspects like, okay, so like when you sit down and you're writing a song, you're not necessarily thinking about how you're going to perform it live, right? So you write out this, you know, composition or whatever, but you take it out live and you find out, man, you know what? I can't sing in key and hold these pitches and blast for 2 minutes straight. Right. So you've got to change a part here or there. And so what we found by adding vocals this time around is we had to change parts everywhere else in order to make room for the vocals. All right. So obviously I'm not taking as many solos and leads this time around. They're very kind of selective throughout the record. And that's because you got to make room for vocals, you know.
You got to make room sonically, and you have to make room physiologically, like you just said. There's just some stuff that you don't like the idea of there being a limitation on you. You know, no way, dude, I could do that. I could absolutely do that. But Kyle and I are both married guys. We're both working. You know, we're out in the world, like trying to get our lives done, trying to get our mortgages paid, and the volume of time that it would take to be able to, like, you know, oh, I'm like singing in perfect key and like doing these sweep arpeggios at 500,000 miles an hour. It's maybe someday, but the logistics of that would just be tricky to organize for where we're at right now.
Yeah.
I have a jazz background. I was used to doing, John, you saw at the show with Dingbats, man, I'm used to doing a certain amount of free improvising, even though the music is heavy and significant parts of it are written out a specific way. I'm used to that kind of a flow. And that's a change that I have made as well. Everything is now through composed. It's worked out, meant to be played the same way all the time, every time, because that's what needed to happen in order to be able to successfully pull off the vocal thing, man.
With the gospel, how is this the continuation of what you guys have created initially? And when people go back, they will see this. You know, you guys made up the tarot cards. You guys came up with the concept art. Every album you do is conceptual, and all of it builds upon the other. But it's also kind of, hey, you know, CDs, no CDs, you can follow along with the artwork like we used to as kids, looking at the back of whatever album and being like, oh, this is enchanting, and then studying front to back. How is this a progression in the overall story for you gentlemen?
That is actually related to the new book that we've got that we're working on, the Liber Ordo, where we're kind of spelling out, as we might have mentioned in a previous interview with you, John, that the stuff that is featured in those books, the concepts, the rhythms, the basic idea of just taking art and music and kind of moving in that world as a spiritual or religious experience is something that predates this band.
Sure. Yeah.
And so there's a lot of stuff from a long time ago that we've kind of adopted. We move in it in our lives in our way. And it's just now coming out to the fore. We're finding out that the gospel, the new version of gospel with the vocals, a lot of the lyrical content that wasn't either about the struggle or the process, the journey of what we were going through, the stuff that still relates to the stuff with the books relates a lot to sort of the forces of the system that we have in place, allegorical, references to things that are like great forces or gods, but they're really the aspect of the self. The great tree is your strength. The moon, iconography or the allegorical references to the moon is a reference to your inner passion. And so we're just essentially, it's an endeavor to share on a broader scale the stuff that we've been doing the whole time, but approach it, just as we have always done, make it available. Yeah. Nobody has to do anything. If you like the songs, thank you, if that's as far as it goes for you. But if you're the type of person where you're curious on a deeper level about what we're doing spiritually, from a religious standpoint, whatever it may be, that stuff is now being issued on social media. We're literally putting out, on anywhere ranging from once a month to sometimes once a week, content from the Liber Ordo that spells out in a very direct and conspicuous way what we're doing. I would say more so than anything else, it's the only thing better than you doing our thing is you doing your thing. And that's I think another thing that we want to convey. Yes, we have people that have begun to profess curiosity about what this is now that it's being laid out in English. It is being made more clear. But the point of it isn't to, we have a record called Cult. The point of it is not to try and get people to join some weird thing. It's almost to illustrate, like, we just created this. We created this, we vested it with a lot of time, a lot of energy, and a lot of our thing, a lot of our vibe. And you can do that too. You don't necessarily have to take what is handed to you, particularly with things that are as personal as spirituality and religion. We want to show people that they can be free to just the way that they should be free to experience music or art in any way that they choose. You can sculpt that in any way that you choose. You have that authority. You don't need to rely on somebody else for that if that is not something that speaks to you.
Yeah. And so to answer your question, like, very directly, John, the way that gospel ties to cult and all the other stuff is we through the use of lyrics now. Our use of lyrics now is almost like the ligamentation connecting the listener to the artwork and the magic, right? Because we can now say it to you. Yeah. You can hear it. You don't have to decipher it in any kind of way. It's just like the last line to Let Me Go, Tenebrous cosmic designs formed in circles, angles, and lines. It's a direct reference to what we're doing in the book.
Thank you for actually answering this question.
You know what? Only because I've seen it. I have expressed my love for your sensitivity to art and understanding it and your capabilities to implement it. So I have an understanding with your answer, Paul, with as you're explaining it, that English aspect is going to change the world, because I was struggling for the simplest rudiments of the only thing I could translate out of it, which was the music. That was kind of the underlying of like, okay, this is what they're thinking if this situation pops up. So to be able to see that, again, we talked about it the last time we met up. It can be unsettling, but when people understand what you're trying to do, this last year, I was confronted with my spiritual sensitivity to reality. I'm one of those guys like, yeah, God exists, but he does it through science. So, whatever crazy BS happens, it was scientific. Now I don't want to say forced, but I've been exposed to more so my spiritual sensitivity of when things are, this is more outside of the norm. And not all of it, but a big part of it has been my musical inclinings. I've had 3 very distinct moments last year where, you know, you're just living your life and then all of a sudden it hits you. You got the fire, the ability to play no matter what, how long, you're just on fire. And then you go back to do the same thing. You're like, damn, this isn't as good as like yesterday. What happened? The other one, the antenna, where people are like, say, asleep at 3 a.m. and then they get the call, the riff just pops up, and then they go and it's like, oh, I gotta save it or I don't save it. And damn, there was one I didn't save. I can still feel it, but I can't hear it. You know, those little situations, or even when, you know, God forbid somebody passes or something good happens for somebody else, and just this energy of just pure ability just comes upon you, inspiration, whether it was good or bad, it flows through you. When are you guys most spiritually susceptible to hearing the call of the art? Whenever, as I say, the Holy Spirit, you guys said the universe, or, you know, that being, that entity. What is a moment where, you know, like, man, every time I try and watch TV, it pops in my head. I'm like, oh, I'm in the shower. Why now? When are those times you usually find that you're spiritually sensitive to art presenting itself?
So, that's another really good question. And I guess I would think every artist is going to be a little bit different, right? But for me, I'm like almost seasonal in a way. And that might be because we've been on a schedule for so, like a very regimented schedule for so long. Uh, for me, it's in our writing phase, right? So when we are not necessarily on the road, we basically take kind of like 4 to 6 months off every year during the winters. It's a little, it's too hard to travel. It's too hard to make money. You can't compete with the weather and you can't plan it, right? So you have no control. And so we pretty much just tour from spring until the end of fall or the beginning of winter, and then we go into hibernation mode. But hibernation mode isn't really hibernation mode. We're writing, and we're getting stuff ready for the next record. And for me, that's when it's like I can't think about anything else. All I can think about is what the melody line is going to be. You know, what's a cool transition from this part to the next part. This part isn't going to work with this song. Maybe it can work in this other song because it's, you know, it's the fifth of whatever the key of this other song is. And maybe just that kind of silly nonsense. My wife will be looking at me and she's like, you're thinking about music stuff right there. And I can't lie to her. I'll be like, yeah, I am. But it comes and goes. Once we start going out on the road, I'm in like tour mode, dude. Like I'm thinking about selling merch. I'm thinking about performing the songs. I'm thinking about getting everything set up. Like how many t-shirts do we have to order? What kind of plane tickets we got to book and all that stuff. And I can honestly tell you, like, I'm not thinking about the creative spark or the magic or the spirituality isn't necessarily with me then. We're having fun. For sure.
Yeah.
We're having a lot of fun.
No two damn ways about
Yeah,
that.
that's like all the fun part. And so, I mean, in a weird way, for me, the spirituality and the magic part is in the hard work, writing and composing the songs and getting them recorded and all that stuff. Yeah, I can't think about anything else. I struggle to do anything else, actually, in those situations.
You know, it's funny actually, Kyle, that you would bring up the seasonal thing, because that was exactly what I was going to say as well. You know, I think that the moments, you know, John, you had playfully mentioned things like, oh, every time I'm trying to sit down and watch TV. I know a big one for a lot of people is every time you like put your head on your pillow to go to sleep and you just start to settle down from the end of your day. And that's when that lyric pops in, or that's when the riff occurs. I think that there's a loose cataloging of those threads that go on during the active season when we're out, we're playing, we're on the road, we're doing interviews, hanging out with people, partying and stuff. Those things, it's almost like I'll get back to you, you know, and it's back to you. Didn't plan that, but the point being that once you're in not power down mode, but when the power shifts and you're no longer, you know, you have to rush through the airport, make sure you have your passport with you because you got to get on that plane or you have that long drive ahead of you after a show. It's kind of in that downtime, you know, during the winter when you're able to start putting those puzzle pieces together. And we've been doing it long enough now that it does. It's it almost, if you mentioned the energy flowing through you, it does almost feel like it flows through you, and almost in a strange way, like certain things organize themselves. I think I'm sure you would probably agree, John. That's one of the strangest things about creativity. Is I know for my part, it doesn't always. Most of the time, actually, I would say it doesn't feel like it's coming entirely from me. It's almost like light passing through a window, and some of the dust motes floating on the other side of the window are my personality. It feels like a partnership between you and some ineffable thing that you don't fully understand. Well, okay, now we're simpatico. We're getting on the same level. Boom, here's a song. Thanks for your help.
But that's a brilliant way to look at it. That's very different than how I was, because my thing is I like the approach, and we had candid conversation the last time we talked about this one for the actual podcast, not when we were at Dingbats, about like the Stevie Ray Vaughns, and then the concepts in my classes where the spirit comes over them, but it's still the man doing it. They just allow them to have the ability. That made me think of a story, because I don't have that many opportunities to show off. We post what we post, but sometimes you're just ripping it and you're like, oh, I just wish somebody could hear this. I'll never forget the way you just explained it's perfect, because I was ripping, and I always try and stay humble even though nobody's in the room. So I was like, forget it. I'm in that mode that Clapton is God. So I was like, I don't know if I said it out loud, but the God honest truth, I think I'm like a fucking god of you people. I strummed down, and then my E string snapped, and I was just like,
Bing.
I'm sorry, God. I just wanted to embrace the bad. I'm sorry, Lord. Jesus is Lord. Jesus is Lord. But it was as soon as I compelled myself to feel like, no, I'm doing this. I got this. Boom. I was like, okay, no, I'm fortunate. I've been given a gift. I've been graced with an opportunity. So it was one of those real like bring you back down instantly moments. It was funny, but it was also like, son of a bitch. I was feeling it, man.
Yeah, well, because the thought of coming from you feels really good, But I think that John, that's a brilliant example. It's less like being a factory and more like being a filter. It's songs are like they have their own will, they have their own personality, and so it's like you want a song, the song wants to exist, and it's almost like the writing process is negotiating terms, because you'll be like, okay, I have this first verse, I got a killer intro, now it's time to get to the chorus. I want the chorus to be this. I want the chorus to be this. Does the song want the chorus to be that? And you try and you try and you try, and it's just, and that's not the chorus for the song. Doesn't even mean it's a bad chorus, but it just might be the chorus to another tune. And so it's okay, well, we'll try this other thing. And surprisingly, I know like Kyle and I have encountered this several times as a band and as individuals. Sometimes the concept of killing your darlings, going directly against what your traditional or well-worn writing instincts are, will reveal what the next part is. Like, oh, this feels weird. I'm not in my comfort zone right now. This isn't what I naturally gravitate to. And yet when I listen back to all these parts together, this is it. This is the chorus. This is the song.
Speaking of that, we got to go into the cover of In Bloom, which screams Pathos and Logos. I didn't even think, I was like, oh, In Bloom, maybe it's their own stuff. Then I caught, like, oh, they're covering. And it was like Jimmy taking on the Tower. It was just the perfect, like, yo, this is so good. This is so up their alley. Why haven't they stolen from Nirvana sooner? Like, I have to know, how much fun did you guys have doing that? Because it just seems so natural to the element of the band. It's not even like, oh, well, who came up with it doing it? No. Just tell me the good stories from studio doing it. Because that, especially when the bass came in, I was like, yo, they're having too much fun. The little screams in the background behind the chorus too. I heard you, Kyle. I heard you. It was just perfect. It was just perfect.
Oh yeah, man, and that one was a lot of fun to record. It's fun when you're doing cover songs, because as Paul had said earlier, like it's already written, right? So you of course you want to put your own little flavor on it. Like, so for example, on this one, like we kind of threw out the solo that was originally there, if you want to call that a solo, and just kind of like bit the vocal melody, you know what I mean? And that's kind of like a Weezer move in a way, like that's what Weezer would do. But in this particular scenario, it worked out just fine. Dude, we had a lot of or a lot of fun tracking that one. That one too went pretty darn fast.
Yeah.
My most memorable moment for that one, dude, was tracking the bass, honestly, because this is actually kind of funny, and I hadn't thought about this until now. But before I tracked the bass for In Bloom, the cover, the whole album had MIDI bass on it. And it sounded good, you know, it wasn't bad or anything like that. But when I actually picked up the Fender bass guitar that we use to track bass on and tracked the bass for In Bloom, I was like, dude, that's it. I remember calling Paul, like, this is dumb. We gotta use this Fender for the whole record and screw all the MIDI bass. And so it did actually, you know, spur us to go back and make changes to the other songs. That's what I remember most about that track. And I mean, dude, I love playing that bass guitar. We've got a sweet Fender jazz bass that we do all the bass tracks with, and the thing just sounds sick. It sounds sick. We don't even detune it. It's tuned to E standard, just like a regular bass.
Yeah.
And it sounds great.
It sounds great, and it sounded, when you compare it to the way that the MIDI bass sounded, it sounded Nirvana.
Mm-hmm.
Like Kurt Novoselic wasn't like playing a like guitar or something, you know what I mean? Like dude was up there with a bass.
Yeah.
So it really gave something to the spirit of the cover, I think.
Yeah, I mean, plugins and stuff can get you really far, and like a MIDI based plugin will do the trick, but it's too perfect. That's exactly what it is. It's too perfect. Everything's on the grid, and if you want to swing it or whatever, you can do that, but it's still not the same. It's too perfect.
They don't call it grunge for no reason.
It's true.
And you guys are post-grunge, all these genres you're part of, but there is something to be said, especially for me. What I get the most feel from a bass is definitely the strings as well. Something about just changing those strings. It doesn't matter. You can go from Flea to Steve Harris to all these other greats. You can get a little yes in there, but the string sound is always just this. The string itself makes this monstrous sound with whatever plug-in or bass you have. So that's when I was hearing the Nirvana cover, I was just like, I could feel that tension, the feeling of, you know, what you guys were going for. I do have to move on to a live performance. I'm naming the live event already. It's the Chapel incident. I wanted to know that show because that was the first time you guys were releasing info about like, hey, we got gospel coming out. Hey, we're, you know, didn't even say it, but you were singing vocals. I was like, okay, changing it up. But it just seemed like the greatest comparison of like what you guys are trying to do spiritually of getting art out there and then having it at that chapel. It reminded me of the church in Philadelphia everybody goes to for the hardcore, the grunge. Like if you're brutal, you got to go to that church in Philly. You got to perform there. So what led up to you guys performing at the chapel, and when's that live EP coming out? I want to see that.
So oddly enough, I know what you're talking about. I know what video you're talking about. It's not a. I mean, is that technically a chapel?
It's a Masonic temple.
It's the Masonic temple. It's not a chapel. Temple, you know, are kind of in the same vein. So Chempal. There you go. But yeah, bro, that was in Wichita, Kansas. That was at a venue called Temple Live, which is Wichita State University.
I think it was. I think it's related to the school.
God, I hope I get that right. Yeah, that was Wichita State. Either way, so yeah, they had a venue called Temple Live, which was a Masonic temple, and so we were performing in what would have been, you know, I don't know what room that they would call that.
Yeah, I don't know what the name of
it basically would have been like the church room or whatever, the pew room or whatever, you know, where everybody would seat and gather is what it looked like to me. They had a stage. You could tell it was built up and it was to be a stage. And yeah, I mean,
Monica Fest.
That's right. It was called Monica
Our friend
Fest.
Monica Maddox out there in Wichita. Yeah.
Yep. Shout out Monica.
Shout out Monica.
And Mason Powell, for that matter.
And Mason Powell and Doomed for Death.
Ooh.
Solid dudes.
Think we forgot about you boys.
Love you. Love you. That was I think the great revelation there was, again, because there were surprises that were coming up with the experience of adding the vocals and everything like that. Kyle just kind of like, the magic moved in him, you might say. The spirit spoke to him, and he grabbed his phone, went up to there's sort of like an upper part of the room there, placed the phone there, and got some live footage of us performing with the vocals and stuff. That was not very deep into the experience of performing with vocals too. That could have been the, I don't know, fourth show or something like that. We were doing the vocals
that was definitely less than 5. And we honestly, dude, we were just, it was kind of like one of those things, yeah, like Paul said, it was just kind of in the moment, we're like, hey man, should we record this to see how it sounds?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I went up to the balcony area of the Masonic Temple.
Balcony. I couldn't find the word balcony.
I got you. I went up to the balcony and just mounted the thing and hit record. I mean, the whole video, I think I recorded the whole thing, but like all the other bands and everything like that. But yeah, like looking back on it, it was like, oh wow, this looks and sounds really cool. It looked great. It sounded really good. I mean, even just the source audio was like slamming, dude. The whole camera was shaking because I had mounted it to a rail, so you were getting visually, you were getting a little bit of like the kinetic energy of the show because just the whole room was vibrating. And so, I mean, as far as to answer your question, when are you getting the live EP? We don't have anything like that planned just yet, but maybe in the not too distant future, homie.
Won't be too long. John, I very much appreciate you bringing up the Wichita show, the Masonic Temple show, because I think about that as well. That represented the first time that we were consistently releasing content that depicted us playing.
We had never, we had never recorded us playing.
It was all like truck stop coffee and mosh pit before that.
Mm-hmm.
So
those little things for the fans, we hang on to them. I can't even tell you the first time I saw it. I feel like it might have been like maybe March of last year. I'm lying to you with the dates, but it's those key moments where it's like you remember, just like, oh, I remember they posted that. It was so cool. It's like, okay, guys, you know, just you're doing a great job continuing that idea of like the investment in the bands. And speaking of investment, you guys got Ryan Williams on it. We don't talk too much about your past because it has been documented in other interviews. And plus, you guys just have so much. Damn, man, I'm sitting here after the first interview. I was like, damn, we had such a great and well-depth information, and they've done so much more than that. It's crazy. But through your past lives, you guys know Ryan, and I wanted to know what was it like working with him? What song off this album? Because usually the way you guys construct, I can't ask you like which song's your favorite. I just can't do that. They're all as equally important in the grand scheme of it. But the producers, the outside voices, the mixers, excuse me, Kyle, he helped you mix this gospel album. What were some of the pointers and some of the notes he says, like, hey, look out for this one, or this one's got a good little tune here. This hook might be a little, you know, what was his insight onto what you guys have just created, and how was his experience that he relayed to you?
I mean, dude, Ryan was really, really cool. It's super fun to work with, man. I mean, you know, like you were alluding to, we go back, we'd worked together from the Black Dahlia Murder records, Nocturnal specifically, because he was doing bass on the record back then. And so, you know, kind of fast forward almost 15 years or whatever now. And, you know, he's still in the industry doing real well, working with Metal Blade. I'm obviously still in the industry doing our thing here. And I just kind of reached out. We always stayed in touch, you know, like he would send me stuff he was working on. I'd send him stuff I was working on just to be like, you know, like that's what recording engineers do. Like, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? I'm using this plugin. I'm using that amp and blah, blah, blah. And so anyway, so it came time to get this record done. And we were, you know, we were just kicking around who we were going to reach out to and who we wanted to work with. And he was on the short list. We reached out to a couple people actually. And so, but yeah, when Ryan responded back like real quick, he was super pumped to work with us. He didn't have a whole lot to say necessarily about the song structures themselves. Those were kind of already in place. He did have quite a few pointers as far as like the mix goes though. I know I'm a guitar player, but I've always been like a drummer at heart, or like a closet drummer. I wanted to play drums when I was a kid. At the recording studio, I'm working at recording studios. I was a drum editor. That was my main kind of focus. I would track drums, I would edit drums and do stuff like that. And so I always mix drums fucking loud, man. Like, I like the drums to be loud. I want the snare drum to sound like an axe through your skull. And because of that, I would always have my drums way too loud. So like Ryan would get back to me and be like, "Hey man, a lot of energy going on in the kick drum region. Let's bring down the snare drum. Let's bring down the cymbals. Let's just bring down all of the drums, right?" And you know, it was mostly things like that. You know, just kind of keeping me in check, right? Making sure I wasn't going crazy, you know, with bomb hits stuff. And that was pretty much, you know, the role Ryan played this time around. Oddly enough, I've got another one for you though. Before we reached out to Ryan and ultimately decided on him, we had reached out to another fellow named Jack Daniels, who is in the band War of Ages, who I also recorded back when I was working at Tracks East. He wasn't in the band at the time because, you know, that was 20 years ago or whatever now. And I didn't realize that he's in the band now. And so when we got in touch with him, it was kind of like, "Oh yeah, tell Leroy I said hi." You know, like, "You guys stayed at my house. You remember that?" "Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot." So yeah, just kind of a totally small world. But yeah, dude, the relationship that we have with Ryan is really good, man. I would definitely see us working with him over and over and over into the future.
Yeah, we have a lot of respect for some of the stuff that he's mixed and mastered before. Kyle, speaking to the point that you had made about the mix, yeah, there were some comments about bringing the drums down and stuff, but that's also your decision as like a recording engineer and a mixer. You know, that's just the vibe that you like. One of the things that we kind of put out as a mission statement for gospel was that we're a vocal band now. We wanted the vocals to be prominent. And so I think maybe some of, you know, we got to do this to the guitar, we need to do this to, you know, bring the kick drum down a couple of dB, whatever it may be. But I think it partly reflected Ryan's vision for mixing and mastering, but I think it was also part of the grand design of making sure that the vocal parts popped out.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it ended up, ultimately the mix is more like a pop mix. And I know that sounds strange with as heavy as the record is, but it's mixed like a pop record where your vocals are definitely out in the front, and you know, the instrumentation is in the back a little bit. But
think of the mix of As the Palace Burn versus Ashes of the Wake. You know, Randy's vocals are very forward on Ashes of the Wake, even as compared to the record that had only come out a couple of years before.
Yeah, that's actually a really good.
So I think we kind of had something like that in mind. Mm-hmm. There's obviously more singing, but just kind of get the pipes out front there.
Yeah, it's one of those cases where it's not everybody just knows you, you know everybody. It's legit. You guys have so many connections. It's just, it's only a small world for you guys. I lied to you not. I just ran into Chris Jericho at the airport, and it's the second awkward experience I've had with that man. And I still haven't had a full-on conversation. We keep on having these weird, you know, but we know the same people. And it's just, every time we get close, it's just, it's not happening. It's a little weird. You won't see me again.
Was he with Rich? Was Rich Ward with him?
No.
From Fozzy?
You know Rich Ward?
Okay, so so yeah, in a little bit of a way, man. So like I'm a big fan, or was a big fan of Stuck Mojo back in the day, because I grew up in Georgia for a long time. And I had an aunt and some cousins that worked for WCW. And so they got us in, and I got to meet Chris Jericho. I got to meet Rich Ward, and I forget another fellow, but because Rich like kind of dabbled in wrestling a little bit there for a little bit.
I don't know.
Back. Yeah, I know, kind of nuts, right? Anyway, so I got to meet him as a little kid, dude, and he merched me up, dude. He gave me, I got a Stuck Mojo basketball jersey that we wore, but I wore it to death, and then it handed it down to my brother, and he literally, like, it was tattered. They gave us like a championship belt. We had all the Stuck Mojo albums, all of them signs, dude. Yeah, man, like Rich Ward, super underrated guitar player, dude.
Man, I reached out to him years ago on Facebook trying to, especially when it was first starting out. So fair enough. This was not no entity it is now as far as the
Mhm.
John the Ninja podcast. But he hit me up. He's like, yeah, man, sure, no problem. We'll set it up. And then ever since then, I just haven't been able to get a hold of him. I've sent out like, again, like, hey, just checking in, seeing if we could still rock this. I've shouted to Fozzy, but Jericho is the fun one because are you familiar with the wrestling scene now with AEW and everything?
I would be lying to you if I told you I was super familiar with it right now. I'm very familiar with Chris Jericho, especially going through WCW and through WWF. But I guess, man, when I got really, really into recording in like 2004, I pretty much stopped doing everything else. It was at that point, it was just Pro Tools and playing guitar and being in bands and doing music stuff. I totally fell off of everything there. But I know he's still got the podcast, and I know he's doing AEW.
You guys are so good at being each other's counter. What do you think about this? What do you think about that? And you guys have that trust to, musically, beneficially, you guys are this unit that, I challenge any LLC to go against you guys when it comes to getting things done. But you have been vocal in the past about being able to go back to people and ask them for advice with touring, with performing live. Who is somebody, respectively to you each, that no matter what time of night, pick up the phone, hey, I'm feeling this way about this. What are your thoughts professionally? A little less than calling the wife and asking her, like, what do you think, honey? But something more so like, hey, this is a peer in this field that has always helped me down.
Dude, we definitely have a band mom. It's Nikki Law.
Yeah.
Nikki Law is band mom. She's our typical PR person. She rocks. She's awesome. Yeah. Nikki has always been there for us, always supported us. We were her first in indie band, that wasn't technically on a label, stuff like that. And so, yeah, man, I mean, we love her. Everything that she's done for us, all the advice she gives us is always on point. It's never bad.
No, she really is the consummate professional. She's a wonderful person and has given us and continues to give us a lot of really solid guidance, man.
Yeah.
You can always send Nikki an email, man.
Yep. Nikki, I would say Nikki is band mom, and then I would point to Scott Sommer as band dad. I mean, Scott's been a real good everything. I'm struggling to even find an adjective. He's been a great everything for us, man. I mean, from the first time we met him, we were still coming up, and he was still coming up, and now he's doing his thing over at Century Media on the West Coast, and but he still has time for little old us, and giving us feedback on stuff. He was one of the first guys to actually give us feedback on Back to You, and was telling us, he's like, hey, the vocals are legit, you guys need to keep going in this direction. This is not bad, it's good.
Yeah. Scott's the real one, dude.
Yeah. So
Scott and Nikki.
Yeah, Scott and Nikki. I would definitely say there are go-to people for sure.
And shout out to Nikki. She's podcast mom for me. If it not for Nikki Law, this podcast would not have seen the heights we have seen. So she's very like one of those people like high esteem. Like, yo, she sends me anything my way, it's a no-brainer. It's got
yes, sir.
It's gotta happen. But
Breaking the Law PR, dude.
Straight up.
Breaking the Law. Shout to Breaking the Law PR.
Mm-hmm.
You guys gave me the best piece of advice you've ever been given the last time we talked. And the reoccurring theme, you both were still on the same wavelength. You both said that somebody told you that the best plan is the one that you do. And that's been the motto of the band. I wanted to know, since this is 2 times you've graced me on the podcast and the dojo, what's the worst advice you've ever been given? And was it advice that, you actually followed and learned the hard way? Or was it advice that you heard and I hear what you're saying, but I'm going to go my own route and forge this way? What's advice somebody put in your ear? You're kind of like, I just can't. And it's actually benefited you from it.
It's funny, like phrasing it in terms of what's the worst advice. It's kind of like advice, but it's almost more like an observation about the way the Pathos and Logos functions. If I had to encapsulate it, probably like up to and including a year ago, the beginning of 2024, when we were entertaining the thought of working with another person, inviting somebody else into the fold. And then, and again, we don't bear any ill will, it just things don't work out. But it was another lesson in like, I should be in your band is probably the worst advice. Let me play in your band. I should be in your band. No, the hell you shouldn't. Like it's anywhere ranging from Kyle and I have been working together for so long, and we definitely just have we share a brain sometimes about a lot of different stuff, and we're able to get a lot done because we have a lot of crossover between our skill sets, and then we have a lot of complementary skill sets to sort of fill in the blanks where there might be a deficit, in that, I don't know, maybe deficit is too strong a word, but maybe a better way to put it is they link up together well. And for this, it's not to suggest that we won't, at some indeterminate point in the future, do other projects that include other people and stuff. But Pathos and Logos specifically, maybe the best way to put it is the worst idea would be I should play bass in your band, or I should play guitar. Let me be your singer.
Maybe your singer.
Yeah. No. It's we got a reminder as recently as a year ago that the balance that we have struck is very powerful, but it's very careful, and that the inclusion of other vision, at least for what we're doing right now, is just not the way to go.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of what it boils down to, man. Like we don't play well with others anymore. It's just, I mean, like we have a good time like doing this stuff.
Oh yeah, this is great.
But when we outwardly, we love to have a good time and stuff like that. But when it comes to our art, our magic, and the vision, it's very much like one mind, and it's been that way for a long time. We have a process of getting things done. And we found out very quickly that just even inserting one additional cog into that, and this isn't a slight on anybody,
certainly not,
but we just found just even the addition of one cog, let alone 2 or 3 or 4 additional cogs, is too much.
And I think, Kyle, that now that this subject is up, that would have been especially problematic for the process of creating the gospel record, where, again, Kyle and I are used to a very efficient system of creativity, of recording, of getting stuff out on a schedule. And there was a lot of stuff that even for as long as we've been working together and how clear and well-defined a path we have for production, for getting stuff out there, we had to rearrange a lot of things. We had to be in a lot of scenarios, both personally and as a band, that were a breach of that tradition. And so now we have a frame of reference for it. Now we know moving forward what it's going to be like writing for vocals, including vocals, performing them live. A lot of those questions were answered this year. But if that had been, oh, there's 3 other people, who have their own opinions and that we need to somehow be a common,
we probably wouldn't even be done.
Yeah. The gospel will be coming out in 2036. Yeah, like we can't have that. Yeah, that's right.
But ladies and gentlemen, that was Pathos and Logos. As stern and serious as I can, breaking character from the funny. You won't get a more lovable, spiritually inclined group when it comes to music. They truly make magic. I've been begging for years for them to make a how-to video of their song Regnum. That's my favorite song by them. But truly, the music they create is powerful. The journeys and stories they have helping people and being friendly. I cannot stress it enough how genuine these 2 individuals are. You have to go check them out. Gospel Dropping is out now. You actually don't even worry about the whole album yet. Go do it old school. Go get the single, Let Me Go. And then after you listen to all 3 like we used to, because we couldn't afford the whole cassette, then go get it, because they still have everything. They are massive, best place to go to for when it comes to still getting merch. You can go to the website Pathos and Logos, Apple Music and Spotify, Pathos and Logos. If you want to go to their Instagram, which I personally love because they still post on YouTube and do their excerpts of teaching you music, teaching you the history behind music, talking about their fun stories and some of the crazy interactions when on tour. You can go to pathos.logos on Instagram. Guys, thank you so much for not only being a friend of this podcast, but being such an inspiration for me to do what I love.
John, it's our pleasure, man. And let's do it 48,000 more times. How's that sound?
Ladies and gentlemen, as always, be smart, be mindful, read a little Latin, and figure out where you are in the scale as far as Pathos and Logos. And rock on. Ninja out.
Woo, baby, you listen to John the Ninja. Oh, your ears are about to go on a vacation. John the Ninja's got what you need.